All right, I want you to imagine the last time you watched the general election results with a group of friends or a family party or get together or just by yourself. One of the states always called first at that 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time mark is Vermont. There can be less than 1% of the vote in, and MSNBC or Fox News or CNN is already calling it for insert the Democratic presidential candidate. We are going to break down in this video why Vermont is so liberal and why it often is skewing extremely to the left and not even competitive in general elections. But first, to do that, we have to just understand how liberal or how democratic voting this state is. As you can see here, here's the last 10 election results in the state of Vermont. And Republicans won it once back in 1988 and then have proceeded to lose the last 9 to the Democratic candidate, all by healthy and huge margins, ranging anywhere from 9.93% all the way up to 37.1% with former President Barack Obama in 2008. Well, what exactly is making this state so far to the left? What is making it totally uncompetitive, not a state that's ever talked about as being close to a swing state or really getting any national media attention? Well, let's break that down today. The first thing I saw that was quite interesting is if you look at a state like California, that is another extremely to the left and liberal state, only goes by 20% to Kamala Harris in 2024, whereas comparison, Kamala won it by about 31 points in 2024. So that was even surprising to me doing research for this video. But as you can see here, California might be majority red in terms of the county outlines and the borders here map. And we typically see that in most of the state breakdowns. We see that it's those rural areas, and there's a lot more rural counties than high urban population centers that carry a lot of votes. We see most states look like this, half red, half blue, or even a lot more red than blue. Vermont is completely blue except for 2 counties up in the top right. What is driving that? Now, it's very interesting because as I've done breakdowns for other states, I just talked about why Ohio and Colorado and Florida are no longer swing states. I'll link all those in the description. But we've seen that typically the more diverse a state and higher African American or Hispanic or Asian vote count, those numbers in that state is going to skew more to the left, and the white vote is more reliably red. Vermont breaks a lot of those rules because it is one of the least diverse states in the country. It is over 90% white. Almost all the voting is white. And as we can see in 2024 national exit polls, if I scroll up to the top, the white vote is typically 57% to the right. Vermont is kind of breaking a lot of those rules that we are following a lot when we're predicting elections or betting on them or anything like that. Let's look at quickly, as we go back to our graph, 9.93% is the smallest victory for a Democrat in the last 9 election cycles. I wanted to get this out of the way. I think it's because of Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader, Green Party progressive candidate, as you can see right here, I think influenced the election there in Vermont and could have taken some Democratic voters away from Al Gore, which I think would have made this a much larger victory for Gore. As you can see, 20,000 votes for Nader. I think safely 17 to 18,000 of them at least would have went to Al Gore. And that's 7% or even 6%, whatever, can get tacked on to make this more of like a 15, 16-point victory for Gore. We then look at 2004. Kerry jumps up to a healthy win, 20%. Looks like Bush won 1 county. But the big change, and as you can see looking at our map, was this monster victory by former President Barack Obama. Now, I get it. Barack Obama, very popular, but 37 points, that's huge. A 17% shift to the left, just astronomical. Won every county. As you can see how blue the state looks there. Well, I suppose we should start at that 2004, 2008, because Vermont, many of you might not know this, and I didn't know it before researching, used to be a Republican state, actually. And in the 60s or 70s, it's kind of debated, but it sounds like a lot of left-leaning or liberal people migrated to the state from New York and other liberal parts of New England and could have kind of over time making the state more left-leaning. But Let's look at some exit polls from 2004, shall we? So, as you can see right off the bat, these numbers today are just bonkers. 58% of the male vote going to the left, 60% female. Just for comparison to today's numbers, national exit polls wise, 55% red for men, 45% red for, or 53% blue for women. So both those numbers just right off the bat are extremely high. Definitely not what goes on today. And as we can see this, we're picturing how Vermont has built quite this left-leaning voter base, just based off how different it is than the general election today. What makes kind of those left-leaning voters? Well, Vermont is one of the least religious. I believe it is the least religious states in the country, with about 37% of the population reporting that they're some type of form of agnostic or atheist or just not practicing in religion. And as we look into kind of social statuses here and the social and political views of the unaffiliated, that would be if you're atheist agnostic, right? In national exit polls in 2000, 61% of those unaffiliated went to the left, or for Al Gore. 2004 it jumped up to 67%, and in 2008 Barack Obama got about 77% of the vote, while 23% voted for McCain. So it's a base of voters when you have the highest threshold of non-practicing or non-religious folks, and usually about 3/4 to 66% to 3/4 or even 80% of them vote to the left. We are building quite a Democratic-leaning base in Vermont, but let's allow us to keep going here. White men, 56% blue. You just don't see that these days. White women, 60%. Even that's high. Again, this is reflected by what I was talking about earlier. The 97% of the voting base there is white. This is huge. I mean, 40% of whites going red. We just don't see that, folks. Let's look at exit polls from 2008. This is general election polls. We have the white vote going 58% red in 2004. And here in Vermont, it's 42%. Or 40%, I'm sorry. That's crazy. That is huge. We just do not see that. This state is extremely, extremely left-leaning. But what happened between 2004 and 2008? Because it's a 20-point win for the Democrats in 2004. Then Obama gets in there, and again, we can compare candidates. Obama might be a stronger candidate than John Kerry, but 17%, I mean, that's huge. So let's look at some election results and polls in 2008. Every age group, pretty much utter domination for Vermont. As you can see, the white vote up to 68% in 2008. And that's kind of the vote that we care about or measure in Vermont because, again, it's 97% of the electoral vote there. 58% in 2004, a 10% increase towards Obama in 2008. That's a monster amount. Again, in all my breakdown videos, when I look at this is an interesting stat. No matter how you voted today, do you think of yourself as, you're going to typically see Republicans and Democrats be in the 90 percentiles, right? Like 95% of people that identify as Republicans usually vote as Republicans, or 97% of people that usually vote as Democrats vote Democratic. 85% is super low. And then another thing I want to point out here, look at the independents. There's almost not an independent party in Vermont. 73% going blue. Independent voters are supposed to be your swing voters, your bellwether voters type thing. 73% to the left. I mean, they might as well just call themselves Democrats, folks. I mean, this is an extremely left-leaning state. And another big thing here, 23% of the vote is Republican. That's quite a small amount, quite an uphill battle for any Republican candidate when you're only 23% of the voting group. As we talked about earlier, look at the none here in 2008. Those people that are religiously unaffiliated, like we talked about, 82% of them in Vermont went to the left. It was said in 2008 that Obama captured about 77% of that vote. In Vermont, it was even higher at 82%, monster amount. Catholics can somewhat be conservatives, probably skew a little bit more to the left. 63% in Vermont, blue. Protestant, 58%. All the religious groups going towards the left, monster amount. This is pretty shocking. This is so shocking. If you just follow politics generally, a rule of thumb can be suburbs, skew a little bit to the left, urban, big time to the left, rural areas, big time to the right. 69% of the rural vote in Vermont goes to the left or went to Obama in 2008. That is huge. And 62% of the vote, I mean, Vermont is not well populated or highly populated, doesn't have a lot of like urban centers, no big cities really. I think the biggest city is like Burlington, Vermont. 62% of the vote there is rural, and 70% of it goes to the left. You're just not seeing that in a lot of other states. And again, I will go back to this. California, look at California. California is known as one of the quintessential left-leaning states, and look at the county breakdown, and look at it compared to Vermont. I mean, that is shocking, folks. So, yeah, we saw a really big shift there. Postgraduate studies, college graduate, we can look at this. 52% of people are college graduates in Vermont, so it's a very highly educated state. We're seeing education and highly educated folks trending a lot more left as the last 15, 20 years. It kind of used to be the reverse. College graduates, 52% of the state is a college graduate, and 73% of those voters are going to the left. Postgraduate, that seems high, 24%, and it's an 80-20 breakdown. All these, pretty significant lead for the Democrats. As we can look at exit polls nationally, do we have some educations here? We do. Postgraduate, this is insane, 58% nationally in 2008. It was 80% for Vermont. And look at the percentage of the population, 17%. In Vermont, it was over 20%. College graduate, it was 52%. 50% Democratic nationally. And what was it in Vermont? It was 73%. Wow. We also have a college graduate here for 28% at 67%. So still very high. Not really sure what the difference is between these two. Some college or associate degree, 51% blue. In Vermont, it was extremely high. It was 57%, a little bit higher. High school grad, nationally, we saw that be 52% blue and 67% in Vermont. So nearly every segment or part of Vermont is going to the left in terms of education and really in terms of everything. And it seems like this is just a Democratic and a blue voting, just a little bit more liberal type of people in Vermont. But we can keep digging. The exit polls here are just absolutely like a shocker. I mean, I figured it was a very blue-leaning state, but some of the things, the rural, some of the graduate degree numbers are just insane. And I mean, again, it's backed up by Vermont not being a very religious state, which skews left. Vermont being the first state in U.S. history to legalize same-sex marriage back in 2009, another left-leaning issue. In 2013, Vermont was the fourth state where same-sex couples could get married. Also in 2013, Vermont decriminalized marijuana. I mean, all issues that left-leaning people care about, campaign about, and left-leaning candidates and those in government positions try to get passed, right? Vermont has two Democratic senators, most famously known Bernie Sanders, former presidential election candidate. They have their member of the House of Representatives. They have one is a Democrat. But I will end the video by saying there is apparently some hope for Republicans in this state, while it is slim, and that is the hope goes by the name of Phil Scott. He is one of the most popular governors in the country, is consistently in the top 5 in terms of popularity. He has won all of his races going back to 2016, and again, they really haven't been close, and they've built on their margins every time. Here's a win in 2016, another win in 2018, builds on the lead. 2020 with a landslide victory. 2022 with another landslide victory, and 2024 a landslide victory. Fifth term for Governor Phil Scott, and he is a Republican. Look at the difference in 2024. Look at all the counties going red, and then here's Trump and Kamala's race. Look at all the counties, nearly all the counties going blue. So there is some hope for Republicans, right? Well, it's different though. Phil Scott is an anti-Trump Republican, and you're seeing Trump and Vance be the face of the party, and he doesn't support what they do at all. Phil Scott is a Biden voter. Phil Scott is a Kamala Harris voter. Phil Scott is a pro-choice, same-sex marriage supporting Republican governor. To make some headway in this state, to gain support, you've got to be moderate to left-leaning as a conservative or Republican. And Phil Scott has been all that. This is a highly educated, extremely socially liberal state with its voters and the base and just the turnout. And Phil Scott has been able to speak to them. He identifies himself as fiscally conservative, socially liberal, and is very to the left on a lot of those issues, as I mentioned. I mean, didn't support Trump's immigration policies, kind of caters to that base in Vermont. So it can go to a Republican. Again, governorship is a lot different than a general election. But going to a Republican might be more left-leaning or not what some Trump voters would really identify as a Republican these days. And so I do see the state, unless maybe Phil Scott ran for general election, maybe he could win the state. He probably could. But I don't see him being a viable 2028 option for the Republicans. But this is an extremely liberal state at the end of the day. It could be because of all the migration back in the 60s and 70s. It could just be that the state has gotten more educated and kind of moved to more of a secular state in its believing in religion. But it was fascinating to break down Vermont, which kind of bends and breaks some of the typical rules in terms of the way it votes. You guys let me know what states you want me to break down next in terms of being super far to the right or super far to the left and why that is. And thank you all for watching.